exposure to Nashville like you wouldn't believe. I'm super excited about this group of men that you see in front of you to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship and what's happening in Nashville and fueling it, and their own stories and passions and direction in which they see their businesses going. So, with that being said, I think it's boring for me to sit here and talk to you guys and introduce people who have great voices and know how to introduce themselves. Would you agree with that? Yeah. All right, so what I'll do is I'll turn it over to them, and I'll say, if you will, the first question is, if you don't mind, just introduce yourself. I know people can read in the room, that's cool. But introduce yourself and just tell them a little bit about your own story.
Who are we starting with?
We'll start with you.
All right, great. Really quickly, I want to acknowledge Congressman Cooper. Thanks for being here. Hello, everyone. My name is Marcus Whitney. I've been living in Nashville almost 19 years. I started my entrepreneurial journey in earnest probably about 12 years ago. Moved here as a college dropout, was waiting tables, and really was fueled by a growing family, one kid who was 1 year old and another one who was on the way, to transform my life. Did that initially through teaching myself how to code. That led to a 7-year career in software development. Probably most notably, I was chief architect of Emma Email Marketing, and then left in 2007 to start my entrepreneurial journey. Probably highlights of that, co-founder of Jumpstart Foundry. It's a healthcare fund here in town. Co-founder of Nashville Soccer Club, and currently CEO of Health Further.
Good morning. I'm glad to be here. My name's Harry Allen, and I've been in Nashville almost 38 years, which is also telling my age. I've been here my whole life. I'm a fifth-generation Nashvilleian. Started in banking when I was 18 years old here in Nashville with SunTrust Bank. Was there for 8 years. And then left banking completely. I was telling someone earlier I had a 3-year sabbatical in nonprofit management as the CFO of Big Brothers Big Sisters here in town. And after 3 years of running a nonprofit, which is really running a business, saw value in coming back to banking and adding that perspective of being a business manager and operator to how I serve clients. So joined Avenue Bank in 2011. Was there through its merger with Pinnacle Bank, and then started my entrepreneurial journey with Studio shortly after. We're Nashville's newest bank. We started in July of 2018. We raised $46 million to capitalize the bank, most of that from local Nashvilleians. Super proud of that fact. And today we're 46 employees. We're in the Gulch, $130 million in total assets, rocking it out as Nashville's bank for our creators in town. So glad to be here.
That's great. So I'm Robert Grajewski. I'm the Evans Family Executive Director of the Wond'ry at Vanderbilt University, which is the Innovation Center. I started my entrepreneurial journey after a professional sports career ended prematurely due to a knee injury. I went back to school at Harvard, started a company in my college dorm room. Unfortunately, it was not Facebook, but it's still in existence today. And we have 4 factories around the country, but I couldn't tell it's a make furniture and gifts out of reclaimed bourbon barrels, but I couldn't tell my parents I was going from being a rugby player to a woodworker, so I ended up going into finance, did venture capital on the coast in Boston, in Silicon Valley, and then most recently was in Charlotte, where I took a seed stage investment firm and turned it into a top 40 healthcare startup and sold it to a large healthcare system, which was not HCA. Different firm. And then came back to give back to lead and launch this innovation center 3 years ago at Vanderbilt University. I'm proud to say that last year we were recognized as the Global Outstanding University Entrepreneur Center of the Year.
Awesome. So let's jump right in. First question is, what do you think is fueling Nashville's growth around entrepreneurship, and how has your business been able to take advantage of it?
Yeah, so I think one of the underlying forces behind entrepreneurship is often creativity, and the city's pretty infused with creativity sort of at the core. And then I think what other people who haven't spent a lot of time here may not know is that there is a lot of like real great fundamental business acumen here, finance industry stuff, Harry, with the banking, I mean, that's a long legacy of banking and insurance companies that have been built here. I think that same legacy built the infrastructure for the healthcare, industry, which, seems like a big behemoth now, but it's only 50 years old and is actually pretty entrepreneurial if you look back 50 years at what they were doing, what, Tommy Friss was doing 50 years ago with HCA. So I think it's that intersection of sort of fundamentally being a creative place, and then also just having tons of that fundamental finance, risk management, business acumen.
No, I would agree with that. Being here my whole life in the only city I've ever called home, I can see where we've been and where we are. And if I can use an analogy, it's kind of like Nashville has been a baby and a teenager, and now it is fully leveraging the assets that have always been there. So we have been known at some point as the Wall Street of the South, the Athens of the South. This creative ethos that has been here is now on fire, and it's really exciting for a Nashville native to see, for sure. I think 19 colleges and universities that are churning out students who now want to work and live here and not go off to New York, Chicago, and LA. And this is a great time for entrepreneurs and for business folks.
Yeah, just to certainly echo all of those points makes complete sense. But I also think there's a really strong infrastructure by the government to really help foster innovation and entrepreneurship here. Efforts that Charlie Brock did at Launch Tennessee and the National Entrepreneur Center has really helped provide that bastion of support for our ideas trying to get up and off the ground. And certainly there's room for greater improvement, but a lot of cities, including the city I was most recently in, Charlotte, lacks a lot of those same kind of structures and support. And so having that support and then combined with that southern genteel community aspect of Nashville where everyone is about 2 or 3 degrees of separation and people want to help each other out versus being sharp elbowed or just numbers in the crowd, I think has helped people build each other up to get to where we are today.
So, we talk a lot about innovation. That seems to be a central theme, and I totally agree. Being a Nashville native myself and an entrepreneur as well, I think about the businesses that are in Nashville. And so from your perspective, what industries, I know we're being touted as a foodie town and all those kinds of things now, but what industries do you think are really fueling Nashville's growth, or what industries do you see coming here as well?
Well, I mean, I think I'm glad you just added that last part. And we're at a chamber event. I mean, I think the story of the moment to me is economic development and companies relocating and putting their headquarters here, right? I mean, it's not. If sort of to Robert's point, you talk about the government involvement, and I was there at when TTDC became Launch TN and at the founding of the Entrepreneur Center, and so I was able to see sort of firsthand the impact that those things had. And also see the limits that those things had, because ecosystems and their ability to really spawn new companies sort of at a predictable rate is largely based on infrastructure, right? And existing infrastructure. And the reality is our existing infrastructure is hospitality, healthcare, finance, right? Music. Those are sort of the fundamental pieces. And so there were a lot of companies, in the 2009, 10, 11, 12 that were riding on the energy of the creativity and the innovation, but they were in e-commerce, or they were in this. And, you had a couple that sort of broke away, but for the most part, they didn't, quite frankly. And I think the story of what's happening right now is you're now having new companies that are relocating, bringing sort of more of that infrastructure here that's going to spin off people who are going to leave those companies with that expertise, with capital, and can start to build that next set of companies. The healthcare family tree that Nashville is very famous for is really what I'm talking about, right? You need more of those core fundamental infrastructure companies where great leaders will spawn off to go start new things and have the support of the mothership and also have capital to go off and do the next thing.
Yeah. I don't know that I have a whole lot to add there. I think Nashville's diverse economy has been an asset in prior economic cycles. We're branded as Music City, USA, but we've always been so much more than that. And, to Marcus's point, we're becoming even much more that diverse as an economy. And so I think that we're well positioned for the cycles as they come, that we don't have all our eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when looking forward to kind of what is the next step or where is Nashville going to go, I think much like a lot of industries and a lot of growing cities, I think where we're heading is in emerging technologies, so like data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, even, obviously it's kind of jumped the shark a little bit, but blockchain and Bitcoin, those are the technical kind of next companies of the future, being able to take the rows of information and add columns so that you can do better, insights to help you much more effective and efficient in whatever industry you're in. I see more and more of our students going into those fields and wanting to stay in Nashville. I see efforts like the Nashville Technology Council and others, helping foster that, and with groups like Alliance coming here and Amazon and some of those technical behemoths, I think that will help build a new kind of underlying economy. Probably starting in healthcare to serve the groups that were here already, but then branching out to serve wider industries.
So, it's always been said, what comes up must go down, right? Must come down. So if that law is correct, so we're going to have some ebbs and flows, and they may come.
Yeah.
And if you see them coming, how are you going to protect your business from those ebbs and flows that go on in business cycles? How do you see yourself handling those things?
I think with any startup, and I tell everyone, cash is king, right? So watch out for your leverage. And so with ebbs and flows of any business, right, or any market, being able to weather the storm is how much cash do you have on hand. And so try to start and launch businesses that generate cash flow. That's always a good thing. But likewise, make sure that you're not overextending yourself when it comes to, banking type situations.
Well, I can't. Cash is king. Don't over leverage. As a lender, I absolutely agree with those points. For banking specifically, we watch the amount of exposure we have to fixed versus variable rates, and so banks right now, we have been in a rising rate environment. We're kind of flattening right now, but banks who are overexposed in fixed rate exposure will be vulnerable in a rising interest rate environment because they can't take advantage of that ride. And so we manage our economic risk through our pricing of our loans and deposits. But for our borrowers, we're advising them to absolutely keep an eye on cash flow. And hopefully all of you as business owners have a partner, not just a bank, where you can have strategic conversations about where your business is, and they can advise you ahead of what inevitably will come.
No. I actually have a different point that is not contradictory to those points. I totally agree. You got to have cash, right? I think there's really going to be a bunch of people that are really, really going to struggle, and I don't think it really matters how big or small the company is. I think there are not enough organizations operating at the speed of the internet, not really investing enough in the internet, and not really leveraging the internet well enough. And the internet's going to remove all the middle people. It just is. There's really not going to be any industry that's going to be safe from that. And the speed with which it's going to happen is going to, I think, shock a lot of people. So, that's my biggest thing, is we are now in a space. I think that the speed with which it has happened has not allowed us to have a narrative that sort of keeps up with it. But, you could just look back when I arrived here in town, and, Amazon was nowhere near sort of the kind of company, $1 trillion conglomerate, right? They were not that at all, and there really has not been anything like that in the history of commerce in America, right? That's compressed time and become the most valuable company, and also a conglomerate, to be able to move across industries and turn on an industry and within 2 to 5 years become second place or the leader, right? And it's not just Amazon, by the way. It's really not. They are just sort of a shining example of all the internet companies that are coming. So that's the, I mean, I hope what you're saying, Robert, is true. To be completely honest, I hope that we do pay attention and develop the technical acumen. I'm neutral on that. I try to like be honest about this stuff. My background's in technology, writing code and stuff. I think it's neutral at best in terms of where we stand. NTC is doing a great job, great leadership, but overall, do we really fully understand as a community, as a business community, what we need to do on the technology side is not entirely clear to me.
So based on that, there are always cautions and pitfalls, right? Pitfalls in business. You want to make sure you're navigating the landscape to know how to make sure you're getting around those things that could cause your business the greatest amount of pain. So what advice or other areas are you thinking that entrepreneurs ought to be focused on?
So for any business that's getting started, maybe this is too micro, and I'm happy to answer macro, but especially for any small business or startup business, hiring right is super important, and hiring wrong is very costly. And I have the scars on my back to prove that. From making some bad hires are very costly to my business and to other companies that I've invested into in the past. So I would say hire slow and fire fast would be probably the first thing I would recommend.
My response is related to what Marcus was just speaking on, but avoiding pitfalls is also continuing to have a visionary mindset and understanding where your industry is headed, and create structures within your organization that allow for innovation and collaboration to make decisions and pivots quickly. I think if you're going to survive in the 21st century, like change is inevitable, and staying ahead of that and being somewhat disruptive to your own industry where those opportunities exist will help you survive.
Internet. Seriously. It's like it's the whole thing. It is. It's the whole thing. It's the whole thing.
Businesses are being disrupted by the internet, right? Industries are being disrupted by the internet.
Yep. It's gonna be brutal. It's gonna be brutal. I mean, the macro. Look, this is awesome. Nashville's growing. Nashville's not the only city that's growing, right? Cities in America are growing. Like, go to Austin, you'll see cranes. Go to D.C., you'll see cranes. Go to New York. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, okay? I went home for one of my best friend's birthdays in the fall, and in downtown Brooklyn, and this may not be that big of a deal to you, but in downtown Brooklyn, there are now 30-story buildings. Like, they're knocking down the old stuff that was there, and it's starting to look like Manhattan. Like, I never thought in my entire life I would ever see that. And it's happening, right? And just more and more growth is getting consolidated into the urban core. If you drive an hour and a half outside of Nashville, you will see some of the poorest people in the entire country, right? Just like an hour and a half outside of here. And that's not just about Tennessee. That's about what's happening in the urban core versus rural. But that's a compression, right? Like, if you look at how much, if you look at the market cap of Amazon, it's bigger than many countries at this point. And it's not just Amazon. It's Apple. It's Google. Alphabet. There is a macro level trend around the internet, right? And the next thing will be blockchain or whatever it's going to be, right? But like, if you are not tracking how fast that's happening, you're not living in reality. So my question is just like, how much time and energy are you spending? This is like for real estate people. This is for people in staffing. This is for this is for accounting firms. This is for legal firms. Everyone's getting disrupted. It's coming. Everyone's getting disrupted. So the question is, how are you thinking about the internet? Start with basic things like customer acquisition, but then think about, how do you drop labor costs? How do you serve customers better? How do you communicate with people on the mobile device? How are you doing all these different things? I know it feels like you got to do that, and you also have to deliver value today, but I just think that's the reality of the world. And maybe not in the next 12 months, but certainly in the next 12 years, right? You know what I'm saying? So just trying to give that kind of view to things.
So with businesses in Nashville, we're dealing with the fact that we have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country. And with that being the case, still business, I heard Greg mention it first, that businesses still survive off of talent. The best talent wins, high-performing teams. How do you navigate in Nashville, Tennessee, to find and sustain that best talent in your business?
I'll start. For a studio, it is defining and articulating the culture that you want people attracted to first, so knowing who you are, and then not compromising. Internally, we say that we look for three things: someone who's hungry, humble, and smart. And someone can be a great producer. We're the 65th bank to enter the Nashville market. So we've got competition for talent. We will win by having folks who deliver a high level of service to our clients and those qualities. And we're an entrepreneurial venture, so you have to be hungry. We don't have, it's a startup, so you need to come with that mindset. But it's not enough to be great somewhere else. You have to be a cultural fit. Katie Radel on our team came from outside of the industry. She had some banking expertise, but we saw value in cultural fit. She's in our marketing and membership engagement role, came from the healthcare sector. And so being opportunistic when you find someone and super aggressive to get them there. But also, I don't remember how many conversations you had, but on average, folks are talking to about 12 of our 46 employees at multiple levels before we mutually agree that it's a fit.
Yeah, well, I think in terms of just building the pipeline, it's super important to build relationships with universities, right? So Vanderbilt, but then also Belmont, Lipscomb, Tribeca. There's such a natural ebb and flow with matriculation and graduation that if you were thinking about growing your business sooner rather than later, work with those universities, get in front of them earlier, look to offer internships and opportunities to juniors and seniors for undergrad or for graduate students as well. I think they're naturally coming in from places all around the country and they'd like to stay, but oftentimes university environments unfortunately tend to be very insular. So they don't know what exists, they don't know what is out there, and it's a funny thing because you'd think they would, but they don't. So building those relationships with career services departments, community organizations like what Mary Pat does here, Vanderbilt, and others would be, I think, very key and essential to making sure that you have that pipeline robust and full. And then likewise, looking externally. Nashville is a cool city, right? There's a lot of cool things happening. People want to live here, fortunately. So maybe looking outside of the bubble for that talent and getting unique and creative in terms of ways to bring people in.
Agree.
And the internet.
Thank you. I appreciate you saving me from having to say it again. I was like, I'm going to give him a break on that one. I'm not going to say it again.
But most people are hired off the internet these days, aren't they? The internet is disrupted. So if not Nashville, now I'm a Nashville native, and I believe in Nashville, and I believe in starting that. I think every business on the planet ought to be headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. But if not Nashville, where and why?
Depends.
Okay.
Depends. So Nashville's great because it's in Tennessee, and this is a very business-friendly state. So Austin, Texas, is a pretty business-friendly state. It depends, though. It depends. What are the natural resources that you need, and you organize around that. We had a group of folks from Belfast in Northern Ireland who were here from Queen's University, and Sister Cities of Nashville sort of organized a dinner, and I participated with them on Sunday night. And the vice chancellor was asking me some questions, and he was like, "Why Nashville?" And it's healthcare. Now we don't do a great job of branding that, right? You know what I mean? But like when I explained to him, it's like this is where the rubber meets the road in terms of healthcare. It's not life sciences city. It's not pharma. It's not some big, consolidation of payers. We don't have, we had a great academic medical, university, but not like, we don't have we don't have Hopkins and all that kind of stuff, right? But 1 in every 20 babies that's born in America is born at an HCA facility, and that's just HCA. That doesn't include LifePoint. That doesn't include CHS, right? And so it's the reason why I continue to be here is because the natural resources match the needs for my business. I think you have to, there are businesses that I've talked to, that I've advised, and I've said you really should move. You should move to this place because you're going to find more people with expertise, more businesses that you can partner with, more of the talent you need, more investors who will understand what you're doing somewhere else. So I think it just depends on what you're going after.
I don't know that, yes, and the internet.
It's working.
I'll add, so we raised our capital. 85% of our investors are local, but we did do an institutional roadshow and went to Wall Street, Boston, Chicago, and many institutional investors said there were only 2 markets that they would consider investing in a new startup bank, and Nashville was one of them. We are consistently in the top 5 banking markets, which speaks to the overall economic energy.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly enough, DC was number 2, and then some mentioned the Carolinas and so forth, but nationwide, we were one of 8 new bank applications in this country at the time that we were applying for a new bank charter. Not all of those got done because of challenges raising capital. We raised our capital 6 months before we filed our application, so that is a testament of the power of Nashville and where we sit right now.
I agree with that.
And the internet.
And the internet.
So we have been talking a lot about money. So for an entrepreneur, bootstrapping, investments, investors, or loans, how do you determine?
I think it really depends on where you want to go with your business and where you see the trajectory and the pace of growth and whatnot. There is a romance with Silicon Valley, and venture capital. And I'm a former venture capitalist that worked in the Bay Area and in Boston, probably the 2 hubs. But we sometimes forget that only about 3% of investor and companies get venture capital dollars. And most of the money is either generated through sales, right, and building a business that's sustainable, or through friends and family, or through banking relationships. But they're just kind of less sexy, so to speak, from other opportunities. I think, it depends on just kind of what you're looking to build and what you're looking to grow and the time frame. Because it's from venture capital, for instance, that's a 3-year high growth time frame, and you're going to have an investor that's going to poke you in the eye every morning to understand why you're not hitting these metrics. If you want a slower growth, there's different ways to go. And I'm stealing the mic here, but and my buddy Andrew Goldner, who runs GrowthX in town, it's a venture capital firm, says it best. He's like, a $10 million or $15 million company in Cleveland that's spinning off $3 million a year in profit is seen as a huge success. But if you're out in Silicon Valley with a $15 million company who's spinning off $3 million a year, you're seen as a huge failure. So it's just a completely different mindset, because they're looking, what's the next $100 million thing? Might not have to generate profit, but they're looking for that high growth, that high number.
Now, it does depend on where you are, what you're building in terms of what your entrepreneurial venture is. I will tell you, loans from a traditional bank are tough for early stage companies, just because of how we're regulated. We take deposits from the community and we leverage those and lend those to businesses. But for our deposit holders, we have to be 99.9% right that the money we've loaned out will come back to us. And so for a true startup, it's difficult to underwrite that certainty. And so it can be difficult as an entrepreneur to find loans to be the way that you capitalize your startup. There are ways and means and credit enhancement that you can provide, but typically it's bootstrapping, friends and family, or investors that gets you started.
Can we just clarify that is not hyperbole, that 99.9% is actually what it has to be? Because I think people hear that and they think you're saying, oh, you mean most of the time. No, No, I mean, I think it's so. Hold on, real quick. I think it's actually 99.5, right? Isn't that isn't that the real number?
It's 99.9.
Okay, but hold on. That's your number, right? That's your number. Okay.
But no, I mean,
He's the entrepreneur-friendly bank, guys.
so I will mention, we hired Phil Schmerling. I don't know if
Phil's a
you
good
know
guy.
Phil for sure. We do see value in having conversations with early stage companies and being a resource, even if we can't be the creditor. And so we do see a need for Nashville with our entrepreneurial scene to have a bank that has someone who's equipped to engage in those conversations. But yes, from a lending standpoint, our regulatory agencies will come in and want to see very minimal loans on the books that are in default status for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm part owner of a venture capital fund. You know, the healthcare business, if you're trying to sell into it as a vendor, has very, very slow sales cycles. You know, sort of, this is a generalization, but the industry average is around, 12 to 18 months if you're selling into a provider or a payer. And so, oftentimes capital is really pretty necessary, whether, that's friends, family, self-funded, et cetera. If you're starting a consulting business, no, you don't need any. You just go out there and you sell and you generate revenue. So it really does depend on what kind of business you're doing. There are some businesses you just can't do without funding, right? So it's such a generalized question for such a non-general situation.
Can I add one more nuance, just in case there are entrepreneurs who are looking for lending relationships? I think keeping your personal financial situation sound is hugely important, because that first loan as an entrepreneur, the bank is looking primarily at the individual and the team behind the effort, where the sustained cash flows from the business aren't there yet. So just keeping your personal credit in check and view is hugely.
That means they may not require it, but they're probably going to ask you to guarantee that if your business doesn't pay the loan back that you will. Doesn't mean they're going to require it, but they might ask you to do it.
You've got to have some phenomenal assets in that business.
That's right.
Not to, right?
That's right. That's right. 99.9.
Very good. So I don't know an entrepreneur on the planet who hasn't had to make some sacrifices, personal sacrifices, in order for their business to be successful. So what sacrifices have you made? How have you come to terms with those sacrifices? What did you have to change in order to fix situations that may have happened around those sacrifices that you made in your business?
You've heard. Ready to get real? It's like a therapy session.
And that was one of the first realizations for me, is that entrepreneurialism is not about glamour. It is about sacrifice. And when we started this process, my youngest child was 3 months old. My children are now 7, 5, and 3. And just the time with them and the energy it takes to raise a family and be present, as well as raise a baby business that's in incubation as well, is a challenging balance. I also serve the community on a number of boards, and I made the decision early on that I would not serve in the capacities that I had previously if the meetings regularly require evening attendance. And so just figuring out ways to, in the new energy that's required to start something, ways to be present wherever you show up. So fully present when you're engaged in building the business, but fully present in your personal life is the challenge, and that's the sacrifice of the entrepreneur.
Yeah, I heard from a mentor and advisor early on that being an entrepreneur, you sleep like a baby, which means you wake up every 3 hours crying hysterically. I've helped start now. I've invested, probably about 15 or personally invested, not counting the funds I've been involved in, about probably 15 different startups, and I've helped start probably about 3 companies on my own. where I've had operating roles in my life. And I guess I am, I'm not married, so that was, so there are sacrifices that go, with that. But I think, like you said, having your house in order, your personal life in order, is super important before you go off and take that leap. I think having a strong advisor or a mentor pool of folks that have done it, and groups like this for support is super important. I wish I probably had a bigger advisor pool earlier on, just because it gets lonely sometimes when you're doing it on your own. Finally, just finding those right people in your life that support and get what you're doing, because only about 10% of the population, picking numbers out of a hat, but probably like 10-12% of the population is entrepreneurial. The other 88% is risk averse, so they just don't get it, and so you got to find those folks that do get it.
Entrepreneur life is awesome. I think in the true sense of the word, like the highs are much, much higher, and the lows are much, much lower. And so my current focus is working out, not drinking, sleeping, eating well, working out, seeing a therapist. I'm not even kidding. I think entrepreneurship will either make you a superhero or kill you. I'm not sure that there's much in the middle there. It's hard to sort of stay in the middle there, but it is. We call our organization our seed stage thing Jumpstart Foundry, and that's what this thing is. It is going to compress everything around you, and it will make you question your priorities, and it will make you question your worth, and it will make you question your reason for doing what you did, like really existential things. And so I think self-care, that's the thing I wish somebody had said to me 12 years ago when I really started this thing, was like how important it would become for me to take care of myself. Because that just is a whole different way that you physiologically approach the challenges when you're well, as opposed to when you're self-medicating or, and by the way, that happens in entrepreneurship all the time. Like you're always having happy hours. You're always just keep it real. You know what I'm saying? You work really, really long hours. You eat out to celebrate. You don't sleep well. You stay up into the night. You're on your phone. You're getting blue light. Really, it's actually not that healthy. So you have to, you really have to make it. I'm serious. We were talking about this earlier, right? Nobody's talking about this, but I'm seeing bad stuff happen all around me. I'm seeing it, and I want to encourage people to be entrepreneurs because I think it's a great life, and I think you can impact things, and I think you really can get a sense of the agency you can have in your life and in the world through that path. It's not the only path, but it is a surefire path to be able to really, you want to test yourself and see what you're capable of. Entrepreneurship's an incredible path, but it's not for the faint of heart. You know what I mean? You got to be strong, and if you don't take care of number one, you're going to quickly find out things are way out about, even if your business is massively successful. I see people with massively successful businesses and then they have to take massive hiatuses because they're going to have a heart attack, or you know what I mean? It's what's worth it? You know what I mean?
Very good, very good. So I don't want to take up any more time. I know we have a few minutes for some questions. We want to take 2 or 3 questions from the audience. Does anyone have any questions? We'll start right here.
Yeah, I got one. Amos Robinson Analytics. I was just curious as to Goldman, McKinsey Group, they put out a report a couple of years ago that about 70 to 80 million jobs are going to be impacted in the economy through automation and technology and hitting on the internet so much. That's going to be a potential problem, obviously. That's what this policy talks about, providing people with $1,000 a month, with income because of disruption. How does that feed into your thoughts or your mindset regarding entrepreneurs? AI.
Yeah, I'll start, but I think that for us, that's the opportunity. We knew that it has been 10 years since a new bank had started in Nashville, and so the challenge and the opportunity both was how do we re-envision how banking is done in our market. Technology has also changed a lot in that 10-year period. And so building a digital bank with a physical presence kind of wrapped around it is what we decided to do. We're constantly challenging our technology vendor to rethink processes, utilize AI and machine learning that automatically scans financials as they come in. But we are a lean operation that's, much more efficient than a lot of the traditional banks because we decided to invest in technology as a startup. And so I think that's the opportunity for the entrepreneur is the world you're starting this in. How do you find those partners to help drive efficiency early on and allow you to scale fast?
Can I ask you a clarifying question about that? So you said you're lean and efficient. So does that mean in your business plan you're going to make more revenue per employee than the banks that exist today?
So bank financials are publicly reported every quarter, and we're already more efficient than our peer banks in the market because of that factor.
Right.
Yeah.
So that means you'll be able to do more with less. It also means you can invest more, so you can grow more, so you can be more wealthy, so you can relocate other. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the answer is that's what's going to happen. Yeah. Like, how many people here have an Alexa or a Google Home device in their house? Okay, it's about half the room. How many of you actually use it? Okay, great. So we're using AI already, right? Yep. What do you use it for? What do you use it for?
Me?
Yeah.
I use it when I cook. I use it to set timers.
Okay.
Check the weather.
Okay. Okay. Great.
So that can just kind of automate things.
Great. All right. So lightweight uses right now that haven't fully replaced things. How many of you have tried to actually engage it to use something that would replace something?
Mine, we will say to lock the door, to turn on lights.
Okay. Yeah.
About replacing.
You're replacing yourself. Right? Right? Yeah. It's where it's all going.
But I think there's, with technology and efficiency, there's always a downside, right? And so one thing we need to think about, unfortunately, we're all a privileged bunch, right? We get to sit here at 8 a.m. and drink good coffee and eat nice fruit and listen to us talk about the internet. and, so it's beneficial, but there's a large swath of population that's going to be the have-nots. And that's something that keeps me up at night. As a person who wants to live an impactful, driven life, someone that invests in early stage technologies that will make things less efficient, we need to think about creating, workforce development programs, greater opportunities in terms of investing in areas like the opportunity zones and things where we're trying to close the gap, bringing more conversations and people to the table that don't necessarily have had a seat historically for a variety of reasons. And that's, I don't have the answer to that yet. I don't think probably any of us do, but as we're making more efficiencies, I would hope that, and I'm a capitalist, but I would hope that companies especially would look to invest back into the communities that they're in.
Absolutely.
I have a question about workforce development. How do you as an entrepreneur attract a good workforce? Because if you have a small business, it's much more easy for me to say, oh, your startup medical center, your startup hospital is nothing compared to the HCAs of the world. How do I attract that top talent and let them know that my business is amazing and I need you to be a part of it?
I think it's, first and foremost with a startup, right? The CEO is the head salesperson, the head of marketing, the head of HR, etc. So being an evangelist for your brand and for your mission and your vision is key. And getting people to buy into that mission and vision because you are so adamant and so passionate and so confident that you're going to be successful will attract those folks that don't want to be kind of a cog in the machine, but rather want to branch out and have that upside. Likewise, incentivize people the right way. I think a lot of big companies fall short because they start treating people like machines and they forget to treat them like humans, both financially incentivizing them based on understanding, our success breeds your success, but also understanding how their work outside of monetary is actually driving impact to that company itself. So people knowing what they're doing every day and how that's leading to that greater goal that you're evangelizing. I think those are kind of two suggestions I would recommend.
Yeah, I would agree. Folks have different risk tolerances, and for some people, it's just joining a startup's not for them. We sell being a part of something, being a part of building something, and then we incentivize folks by making them owners. So we have decided to allow everyone to share in the success of what we're building. And if you are in a more corporate setting, especially early to mid-career, you may not have those opportunities to own a significant piece of the workplace that you're going to or the company that you're working for. And so that has helped us attract folks to be a part of what we're building. But we have found a lot of folks want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. And so if you can articulate that and compete on culture, it can be a pretty compelling attractor for talent.
Yeah, so two things. One, compete differently, right? So you can't beat HCA on a bunch of different things. So why spend any time trying to beat them on those things, right? So you a lot of this has to get into self-awareness and just understanding what your value is, and then being totally fine with that and uncompromising about that, and knowing that that's going to attract the people who are going to be a right fit for that, right? It's you want high potential people, but they have to be the right people as well. It's not just great people, it's the right people, right, for you. And that's for you and how you are and who's going to work well with you and at this stage of your company and sort of all that stuff. So a lot of this has to do with being you in the most uncompromising way possible is going to get you to the right people, and you just have to believe that. And then on the attract thing, you have to build brand, right? So you're on Marcus Whitney TV right now, right? Yeah, this is not Chamber TV. You know what I mean? And this is me leveraging the internet. I take this hour, and it's going to play forever.
I didn't sign a waiver.
One more question.
Sue me.
One more question. We'll take the last question.
I have a question. You guys briefly touched about life-work balance, and as a woman, I find this to be even more difficult. Maybe it's random that there are no women on the panel today.
I apologize for that, by the way.
I recently read an article by Inc. And
We gotta work on that.
Between 5, it was work, fitness, friends, sleep, or family. And you can only pick 3 out of those 5. Do you find that to be true?
Could you repeat the 5 real quick?
Work, sleep, family, fitness, and friends.
No, absolutely don't agree with that.
No, you think you're able to manage?
I know I do.
All 5?
I do it all the time.
I do, but I don't do it alone. I think you mentioned mentors and advisors. The partner that you have in life is super critical. I do a great job balancing. I think if my wife were sitting here, you can ask her to confirm. But I absolutely couldn't do it without partnership and support.
I think you need to carve out the time. So, and again, I'm single, so I'm not married. So I guess I don't have the family thing yet. Maybe one day. But I think as an entrepreneur, your professional network grows, right? But your personal network kind of gets tighter, but it becomes more important. And so that's why I think it's super important to have a partner that's also your friend, that the people that you want to hang out with, etc. So I think that's super important. I think also there's a lot of time spent during the day, even now as an entrepreneur, that I think back and I'm like, man, I wasted that. I was hanging out on the internet, or I was doing, and I start thinking in my mind, kind of operational efficiencies, which means I probably work too much. What can I do in my life to be more efficient and not kind of waste that time? And then you got to really just carve it out. For nice thing about being an entrepreneur is that you do have that flexibility. So I'll go work out, at 11 o'clock in the afternoon for an hour and then go back to work. You know what I mean? Or I'll try to wake up early and go, or do it in the evening. But I just carve out that piece, and I try to have it every day as a structure and build my schedule around that. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to, it's going to get overlapped by other things. So carve out time for family, carve out time for friends, carve out time for working out. It's kind of very, I guess,
Something like
robotic, automatonic, I guess, but you just kind of have to do it.
Well, and I mean, we work hard, whether we're in a corporate setting or an entrepreneur. I think what we haven't said yet is when you're starting a business, it's probably in line with a passion or interest. And what I've found is that work becomes energizing as I'm doing it because it's also my passion. And so I have more capacity because I'm doing something that I truly believe in and believe is making a difference. And so I don't have the burnout, oddly enough. It is different energy spending, but the burnout syndrome that others suffer.
Say those 5 things one more time.
Work, sleep, family, fitness, or friends. The entrepreneur's dilemma. Pick 3.
So ridiculous. So I'm going to start campaigning against this kind of crap. It's just not real. So there needs to be a 6th category, which is all the other crap that other people try to get you to do that you say yes to and you should say no to. Right? Like that's not even that many things. Sleep, okay, 7 hours a day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Exercise, what do you need, a half hour a day? 45 minutes a day? Okay, work, you're not going to work more than 10 hours a day. Like most of you will not. Some of us will, but most of you will not. Okay, family, what does it really take to meals, right? If you have children, attending, the important things for them, the weekends, carving that time out. What was the 5th thing? Friends. Okay, how often do you need to see friends? Once a week, schedule dinner with friends. Once a week, schedule dinners with friends. Weeks go quick, right? Okay, there you go. I just solved it for you. Like, but seriously, like that, it's really bad for someone to, because see, that attacks your well-being. Like the minute you do, that's not the kind of sacrifice you have to do. The sacrifice you have to do is giving in to what other people think about you, right? Like you have to stop giving a crap about what other people think about you and just be willing to say no, often. I mean, I get people. It happened yesterday. I had a guy reached out to me on Instagram, and I welcome people to do this, by the way. To please reach out to me on digital platforms. I can't stand when people give me business cards because it gives me work. I don't like that. Just reach out to me on LinkedIn or whatever, and then I'll process it when I want to. But this guy reached out on Instagram and was like, "Hey man, I got referred by a friend of mine. I'm doing this business, and I'm at the point where I need some counsel. So tell me what's good for lunch or coffee next week." It's tough, right? But the answer is, I'm really sorry. You can shoot me a note and tell me how I might be able to help you, but I can't meet with you for coffee or lunch next week. And that's like a regular thing. Like, it doesn't feel good to do that, but you have to do that. The number one thing is you have to control your time. Like, if you're an entrepreneur, you have got to have ownership of your time. It might be the most important thing, because it's the one resource you don't get more of, right? You can get more money, you can get more people, you can get better technology, you can't get more time. You have to be incredible at time management. Incredible, right? Like my tactical advice, I care so much about this. Create a time budget. Go into Google Calendar, create a new calendar called Time Budget, and build your ideal week. And then stick to it. And watch how many things try to pull you out of it, right? And then you'll realize, oh, the real game is not against fitness, family, friends, blah, blah, blah. I can fit all that in. The real enemy is every nonprofit that wants me to chair an event. Or every person who comes into LinkedIn and thinks I'm supposed to be their personal mentor because I put videos on YouTube. That somehow that entitles them to my actual time, right? That's the real enemy.
Before we end, I'd love to have our congressman, who is absolutely a phenomenal gentleman, give a few words if you don't mind.
Yes.
I'll be real quick. Awesome panel, and I appreciate them keeping it real. One thing that wasn't mentioned, though, is the role of federal government, either as a huge customer or as a funding source. With all due respect to HCA, it was only founded after Medicare and Medicaid became law. Coincidence? Maybe not. Today, for example, and I hate to say this, because oftentimes the government as a funding partner is big and really stupid. I'm working to make the government smarter, but it's difficult. But yesterday, I heard the chief technology officer of the Pentagon say that they funded a company they met with in New York in 3 minutes. And I'm assuming they couldn't even read the financials. Guess what the government deal is? They don't ask for any equity in the company. Now, a more traditional approach is a small business loan and that process. But the overall federal government is being much more aggressive in finding ideas that they can use and essentially giving taxpayer money away. As I say, I'm working to make the government smarter, but don't overlook this. The government is a customer, and they're big and slow. The healthcare cycle that Marcus was talking about is even longer for the government. But as a funding source, it is awesome. No other investor in the world, not your family, will ask for zero equity in your enterprise. So take advantage of that.
We want to thank you all for coming. Did you enjoy the session? Yes. All right, good deal. That's the part that's most important, that you had a good time. So with that being said, do we have any other announcements? Thank you guys for coming. Feel free to network for a little while before they put us out of here, right? How about that? Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me, man.
I appreciate that. Phenomenal.
Thanks, man. Thanks.